And joining us now here on Market Talk, pleased to have him with us once again as we catch up for our monthly conversation with Richard Fordyce, Business Growth Director of Agriculture at Osborne Bar Paramore, OBP. And Richard, always good to talk with you, my friend. Thanks for joining us here today. I hope things are going well there in northern Missouri.
Well, Jesse, thank you. It is. It's always great to visit, and things are going fairly well in in North Missouri. A little dry.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'd have to think that drought monitor is getting a little bit darker and darker around your neck of the woods there in Missouri, and it's really doing that across much of the Corn Belt. And we were chatting a little bit about this before we went on the air. Obviously, very dry across the Corn Belt. It's having an impact on the markets. It's having an impact on farmers' psyche, so to speak. Our crops are stressed right now, especially this corn crop. But overall, talk about what you've seen on some of your travels here just with this crop. It sounded to me like in some areas it's doing its best to hang in there, but we still need that drink of rain here pretty soon.
Yeah, that's a very good analysis. I think, we well, I mean, just I guess as a barometer, and pardon the pun, but we are about to finish up putting up hay, and we just have not had a lot of rain. We haven't had any of those rain events where you really kind of get some subsoil moistures kind of locked in, and so our hay yields have been about half of what we would expect to average. So that's a little bit of an alarm bell. And we, like I said, we have not had any kind of a substantial rain event really for
Mm-hmm.
months. And gosh, the crop is kind of hanging in there, and I've quit counting the number of people that I've talked to said, how is this crop hanging in there? Because, again, you might get under a downpour, and you go to the rain gauge and there's an inch or two in there, but boy, those spots are pretty isolated. You know, any kind of general rainfall events, boy, we've not seen them. We haven't seen them here for several weeks. And so, I've been around a lot of North Missouri, up into Iowa a little bit, eastern Kansas. And, by and large, things look okay. I think the corn, at least in my travels, the corn crop looks a little better than the soybean crop. And I don't have an explanation for that. I think every year we say, boy, the beans are just sitting here, they're not taking
Mm-hmm.
off. And then you look out one day and then the beans have closed the rows and they look great. So if we could get I hate to say that, but boy, if we could get a good inch, good inch and a half or something, I think I don't think you would recognize the countryside, in 24 hours after that.
Well, that's definitely something I think a lot of folks could be praying for some rain here in the next couple of days. Obviously, we've seen it's had its impact in the roller coaster in the markets and more, but at the end of the day, we just need some rainfall for this crop. That is for sure. Richard, some other things we want to talk about here this month. There's been different news headlines out there. I know between Proposition 12 being upheld in the Supreme Court and then the implementation of Prop 12 getting pushed out to January 1st, giving a little more time to figure out compliance and more. That's one issue. And then we have the EPA RVO biofuels announcement and some of the reductions that we saw or some of those targets that weren't quite met. Some folks thought a little bit less than what was desired, I would say, there coming out from the EPA. So a couple big topics there. Start with Prop 12, maybe just anything you're hearing latest there.
Yeah. So, I guess to backtrack to just a little bit of our conversation last month, I think the Supreme Court ruling was a little surprising.
Mhm.
Given the makeup of the court, that they would stand with with the decision of Prop 12, in California. And then, obviously, you shared with me, I guess I wasn't aware of the fact that they extended the implementation of that out to January, which is, which is, I think, is good news. Although I would say that, some of the folks that will have to comply with that have been thinking about this for, gosh, Jesse, how long has it been since they approved Prop 12? And I think
it's very true.
Yeah, some of our producers, have been thinking that way, have already made some adjustments, but certainly not everybody has. And I think the desire for agricultural producers, is to, obviously, no matter what we grow, whether that's on the livestock side, the crop side, specialty crops, whatever, is that we're gonna do what the customer's really asking us to do. I mean, that's the way that we survive in agriculture. I will qualify that by saying, with some education and outreach sprinkled in there, right? Like sometimes customers are asking for things that maybe they don't completely understand. So the whole issue around Prop 12 is that there is a state that's mandating 49 other states' production systems. And so again, a little surprising as to how the Supreme Court came down on that. And I was with Chairman Thompson earlier this week in a Zoom meeting, and that was brought up. And I think one of the other folks in the meeting said something about, is this going to require a congressional fix? And the person that was in the room said, we have a U.S. trade rep that, negotiates deals and looks out for the interest of the United States in agricultural trade, with other countries. And my gosh, are we going to have another person that negotiates trade deals between states? And I think that, certainly we're not there by any means.
Yeah.
This is an adjustment. This is an adjustment in production practices. Impactful for sure. I mean, there's no doubt about that. But I do think that there needs to be an eye toward consistency. Some sort of a compromise about how this all comes about. And I don't know. I think I read somewhere here just probably this week that I believe there's somewhere around 10 states that have some kind of a production mandate on something. And usually, on this front end, it's livestock. But, Prop 12 kind of opens the door for some other kinds of, production practice, a production practice wish list, I guess I would say. And so the question that was posed to the chairman was, is this something that Congress needs to take a look at and somehow level the playing field, put some guardrails around, what individual states can do when it comes to, agricultural practices. And at the end of the day, what we're talking about is food production, right? Because, anything that disrupts this, and, you and I've talked about this a lot of times. We talked about it with navigation on the Mississippi River and the rail strike. All of the entire system of agriculture has been perfected over a century, right? Production, distribution, the whole supply chain. And anytime we saw that during COVID, anytime there's a disruption, something happens that's unexpected, it takes a little while to adjust to that. And so, maybe that's the rationale for Congress to put some guardrails around some of the things that, states might be wanting to mandate for one reason or another, which goes back to the thing that we talk about, I think, every month. And that is the continual need for that drumbeat of information to consumers, to people that are buying our products, helping them understand the way things are done and the time period that we've gone through to get to, really this innovation adoption and all the things that we do in agriculture that are really, really good, that honestly allow us to provide, the most safe, affordable food supply in the world. And that is, that's something to be really proud of.
Well, and one has to wonder, you mentioned that Congress thought in there, and with Prop 12 and two with the EPA biofuels stuff as well. I mean, you know the makeup of DC, you know how things run there. What are the chances, do you think? What are the odds that we could see some legislative, I don't want to say fixes, but changes, fixes, however you want to put it, to some of this different, some of these different things that have happened here in the last couple of months? I mean, what are the chances that something could actually get done, Richard?
You know, the desire to get something done and actually getting something done, I think, are two things. Whether it's the fallout from Prop 12, if it's the EPA, and the RVOs and those kinds of decisions that come down. We have champions, and we have a number of champions in Congress that understand those issues as well as anyone. They continually bring those up. They talk to them. Hearings are scheduled, and they bring in, folks on in the executive branch to talk about, how did you come up with this decision? Do you know the ramifications of this decision? Can we get you to reverse this decision, or we will demand that you reverse this decision? And, I don't know. Obviously, we have three branches of government. I don't want to get into a civics lesson at all
Yeah.
here. But, the executive branch plays a role, right? I mean, they administer a lot of Congress's wishes. Sometimes the executive branch maybe goes a little too far and does things that maybe, Congress doesn't think they have the ability or the authority to do. And I don't know. I think, what if I were going to be discouraged is if we see things that are coming, either from the executive branch or whatnot, and they're not challenged, right?
Yeah.
They're not challenged by the courts. They're not challenged by Congress. Then I think we're in real trouble. As long as we have these champions in Congress, that are continually bringing up these issues and not letting folks forget about them, and really holding them down to the carpet to explain the decisions. I think we're in a good place. Obviously, the United States is the best democracy in the world, and we have practices in place. Sometimes they don't work as quickly as we'd like for them to, but they are in place for a reason. And so, I guess that was a lot of talking to not really answer the question. But, I don't know. I know I saw American Soybean Association's response to the EPA decision, and they're obviously disappointed. And when they have a public statement where they're talking about being disappointed, that given the amount of effort that's been put into the renewable fuel standard, both on the ethanol side, on the renewable diesel, biodiesel, all of the different fuels now that we have because of innovation and technology, it appears that the EPA is maybe are not taking into account all of the scientific, and boy, I'm going to get out on the end of the high diving board here in a minute, but it appears that maybe they're not taking into account the value of renewable fuels and some of the calculations that go into determining, whatever the issue is that we're trying to address, and not coming up with the right numbers, right? And so those kinds of things, I believe, again, with that steady drumbeat, whether it's the associations, Congress, continually reminding EPA, that we do have the ability to calculate the benefit of renewable fuels across the board and get to a number or get to a situation that's tenable for everybody.
Well, a lot of things to think about there, and great points. I mean, it's a very complex situation, something we're going to have to watch. You throw all of these news items on top of the ongoing farm bill discussions, a little bit of talk about an extension, and I know we've touched on that multiple times. So a lot going on in ag right now. Richard, just wrap up today, sum things up. Anything else on your mind? Anything you've heard from your ag clients there with Osborne Bar Paramore that is on their mind right now? Anything final here in closing today?
Well, I would say that, our clients at OBP, The lion's share of the folks that we work for and represent are in the agricultural space. And, every one of them, their customers are farmers, right? And so, there is I hate to use another phrase, but the folks at the highest levels of some of these companies, their eye is in the sky as well. Like they're looking at the forecast. Not only do they do business with farmers, but they truly care about farmers. And so, the fact that, some of us are really, really needing a rain pretty bad, I think is on their mind for sure. They've got to be thinking about today, next week, next year. There's a lot of things that are on their minds right now. But I think near term, certainly it's the weather and what's the crop condition and what's this crop going to look like, as we get closer to fall. So, I think that, I've heard them make those comments in some meetings that I've been in here the last couple of weeks. And certainly there is there's a real passion for the people that serve agriculture, the people that we work for, that really are concerned about that. And I guess, weather has been the topic of our conversation today. So, hey, it certainly is. And I know a whole bunch of people they're praying for rain and some meaningful, widespread rain across a lot of this country is something that we really need.
It is something we really need, and I think we're both going to be praying for that rain along with everyone else. And of course, we always appreciate a discussion each and every month. Richard Fordyce, Business Growth Director of Agriculture, and Osborne Bar Paramore, OBP. Thanks for joining us here for the month of June. We will talk to you in a couple weeks.
Sounds great. Always look forward to the conversation, Jesse.